Everybody, welcome back to our next Lunch and Learn, and it has taken us to Christie Pits. The boundaries, as I always do first. So DuPont is to the north, Bloor Street is to the south, Christie's here on the east, and Ossington is over to the west. The neighborhood obviously was named after the park. The park itself, however, it was named after the Christie sand pits, which were here on this location until the early 1900s. The sand pits, they were named after Christie Street, but there's differing views as to who was Christie Street named after. So one theory was it was named after Christie McDougall, and she was the wife of a local landowner. Another theory, it was named after William Christie, and we know him as Mr. Christie from, if you're old enough to remember the commercial, Mr. Christie, you make good cookies fame. Personally, I'll always vote for the guy who makes the cookies. Anyhow, Christie sand pits, they were rich in sand and gravel and clay, which were deposited during the last ice age, which ended about 10,000 years ago. The deposit was excavated in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and it was used to pave some of Toronto's earliest streets. Once everything was dug out, however, the city turned the quarry into a park. An interesting sort of side note, I know we all know it as Christie Pits, but it was originally called Willow Vale Park. And that name never caught on. So the common name for the park since its day as the sand pit, Christie Pits, was adopted officially in 1983. The park, it has 22 acres, about half of which are grass picnic areas. There's sports fields, there's 3 baseball diamonds, there's basketball courts, there's a soccer/football field, there's an outdoor pool, a splash pad where the kids are playing behind me, an outdoor ice rink, and a skateboard park. One of the most well-known occurrences here happened on August 16th, 1933. It was called the Christie Pits Riot. So back in the day when Toronto was more grouped by ethnicities, neighborhoods, they had their own clubs, or as we would call them, gangs today. And if you ever watch Peaky Blinders or West Side Story, you know exactly what I mean. Anyhow, in this area, there was the Anglo-Canadian Pit Gang, and they were also known as the Swastika Club. And just by that name, you can kind of see where this story's heading. So at the Diamonds here, there was a series of softball games between 2 local teams. One, the Harvard Playground, which consisted mostly of Jewish and Italian players, and the other was St. Peter's Church. So 2 nights before that, a swastika came out in the crowd, and police, they were warned that there could be trouble at the next game, but kind of unfortunately those warnings went unheeded. And at that second game, a large swastika was brought out by members of the Pit Gang. There was a crowd of around 10,000 people, which is amazing, but if you can see this whole area is like an amphitheater, I guess it seems possible. Anyways, there were cries of Heil Hitler, and they came from parts of the crowd. Not everybody, but parts of the crowd. The Jewish youth at the game, they kind of responded to this display, and supporters of both sides poured in from the surrounding streets, and there was a massive riot. Fortunately, no one was killed, but dozens were injured, and some severely. To commemorate this in 2008, a heritage plaque was put up just at the front of the entrance of the park. Yep. The Christie Pits neighborhood is served by the Bloor Court Village Shopping District, which runs along Bloor Street from Christie Pits to Dufferin Street. The Dufferin Mall is right at the end, right at Bloor and Dufferin. There's great access to transit on the Bloor subway. Little Italy is just to the south. Seton Village and the Annex is right to the east. Christie Pits is just so centrally located to some of the greatest things the city has to offer. Today, the park remains central to the community as a meeting place, a competitive playing field, and just a living reminder of how great and multicultural this city is. Anyhow, let's go eat lunch. We're going to Tacos El Asador. All right, here we are at Tacos El Asador on Bloor Street. I got a burrito, which you can see I've kind of half eaten, and Joelle got a taco and a tostada. She loves it here. This was her recommendation. I'm going to say something about this. I eat pretty much any Mexican food. I love it. It's one of my favorite. I'll go to like a Burrito Boys or something like that, or Fat Bastard, which are good, and I like that. This one's better, and I think it's just sort of the wrapping too, and whatever they did. So I would come here. So if you're ever here, not far from Christie Pits, Taco El Asador. Do it. Traditionally, Christie Pits was a working class neighborhood, and later on, it became a transitional home for immigrants upon their arrival to Toronto. Today, it's one of the city's most vibrant multicultural neighborhoods. Many of the old generation remain, but the lion's share of the residents are now between about 20 and 55 years old. As far as ownership goes, about half rent and half own. The houses, they're modest in size, and they're typically on 20 to 25 foot lots. There's a good mix of detached, semi-detached, with sort of a spattering of row houses too. The majority built between, I'd say, 1900 and probably the mid-30s. The streetscapes of the neighborhood, they're really, really pretty and uncluttered. And that's probably thanks to rear laneway parking, which allows for the homeowners to get rid of their cars here in the front. So pricing. Typical detached in the neighborhood, I'd say 1.3 million to on the low end to probably about mid twos. Semis 1.1 to 1.8 million. Row houses $1 million to $1.4 million. And as far as condos go, there's really only one that I know of. It's at 11 Christie, sort of right at the entrance to the Christie Pits Park. It was built in 2010, and there's about 60 units. Not a lot of sales happened there. There was about 3 one-bedroom sales in the last 18 months, between about 6 and 650. And the last 2-bedroom sale I saw was about mid-8s, and that was only 3 years ago, I'd say. Anyhow, I'm going to wrap it up here. I love doing these videos. Like, share, and we'll talk soon.